Corey and we were close for a while. And then Kylie and I had a big sister fight, and he tried to intervene into it, and so that caused a little problem between us. We apologized and we got over it, but it just kind of stayed here. It never really did that.
Kendall Jenner has been in a long-term relationship with Corey Gamble, a bond they've mostly kept private. However, behind the scenes, their romance has not been without its challenges. Known for her fierce independence and ability to thrive on her own terms, Kendall began to sense that her relationship with Corey was becoming a source of tension, not just for herself but for her family as well. Kris Jenner, the unwavering matriarch of the Kardashian Jenner family, has always prioritized her children's happiness and success. With her sharp instincts and dedication, she's been the backbone of the family's rise to global fame. Yet, the situation with Kendall and Corey felt different. It struck a deeply personal chord, compelling Kris to intervene and urge Kendall to reconsider the relationship for her own well-being. Initially, Corey seemed like a positive presence in Kendall's life. He appeared supportive of her skyrocketing career and offered a sense of stability amidst her hectic schedule. But as time went on, subtle changes began to surface. Kendall, typically the calm and composed sibling, started showing signs of emotional strain. Her once bright demeanor seemed dimmed, and her family couldn't ignore the shift in her behavior. Kris, ever attuned to her children, was quick to notice these changes. She observed Kendall pulling away, skipping family gatherings, canceling commitments, and becoming increasingly reserved. Kendall, usually open about her goals and emotions, appeared to be shutting everyone out. At first, Kris chalked it up to the pressures of Kendall's demanding modeling career. However, the signs of distress became too glaring to overlook. As weeks passed, Kendall's withdrawal deepened. The confident, independent woman her family had always admired now seemed distant and unlike herself. Kris's concern grew into urgency. Unable to remain silent any longer, Kris decided to have a heart-to-heart with her daughter. Determined to understand what was going on, Kris reached out to Kendall, asking her to come over for a private conversation. Kendall, who had been dodging her mother's calls for days, finally agreed. When she arrived at Kris's home, she quickly sensed that this wasn't going to be a casual talk. The atmosphere was tense, filled with unspoken worries. Kris sat in her study, her expression serious yet caring. Kendall could feel a knot of nerves forming as she took a seat across from her mother. Kris didn't waste any time. "Kendall," she began, her voice steady but laced with concern. "I need to talk to you about Corey. I've noticed the changes in you, and I've tried to give you space, but I can't ignore it anymore. Something isn't right, and I need you to be honest with me." Kendall shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her defenses rising. "Mom, it's not what you think," she replied, her voice hesitant. But Kris gently pressed on. "I'm not here to judge or interfere," she said. "I just want to make sure you're truly happy. Whatever's going on, you don't have to face it alone." This conversation marked a turning point for Kendall. While it wasn't easy for her to open up, she began to realize that her mother's concerns came from a place of love. Whether this would lead to a resolution or a new chapter in Kendall's life remained to be seen. But one thing was clear. Kris Jenner wasn't willing to stand by and watch her daughter struggle in silence. Kendall avoided looking at her mother, her eyes glued to the floor. She knew Kris was right, but admitting it felt impossible. She loved Corey, yet the relationship had become increasingly difficult. The emotional distance between them was undeniable, but facing that reality was something Kendall wasn't ready for, let alone discussing it out loud. Kris leaned in closer, her tone softer but still full of determination. "Kendall, I love you more than anything in the world. I can see you're struggling, and it hurts me to see you this way. You've been pulling away from everyone, and you're not the vibrant Kendall I know. Please talk to me. Let me help." Hearing those words, Kendall felt a wave of emotions she had been suppressing for months. Tears filled her eyes as she finally looked up at her mom. She had spent so much time trying to make things work with Corey, convincing herself that they could overcome their problems. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Still, admitting that felt like failing, not just Corey but herself too. Her voice was shaky as she finally spoke. "I don't know what to do, Mom. I love him, but..." Kris gently reached out, taking her daughter's hand in her own. "It's okay to feel uncertain. Relationships are hard, and no one expects you to have all the answers. But I need you to think about what's best for you, not just today but for the long run. Are you truly happy, Kendall?" Kris squeezed Kendall's hand, her voice calm yet filled with love. "Kendall, I've been in your shoes. I've had to make tough choices about relationships, and it's never easy. But you deserve to be with someone who lifts you up, who makes you feel confident, supported, and truly loved. You shouldn't have to question it." Kendall nodded as tears streamed down her face. "I just don't want to hurt him. I don't want to let anyone down." Kris offered a warm, reassuring smile. "Sweetheart, the hardest decisions are often the ones that help us grow the most. Being honest about how you feel doesn't mean you're letting anyone down. If Corey cares for you, he'll understand. And if this relationship isn't what you need, it's okay to walk away. You deserve happiness, and you deserve to feel whole." In that moment, Kendall felt a mix of relief and sadness. While the road ahead wasn't clear, she knew she didn't have to navigate it alone. With her mom's support, she finally felt ready to confront the truth and take the first step toward prioritizing her own happiness. For the first time in a long while, Kendall felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Talking to her mom had eased some of the tension she'd been carrying inside. While she didn't have all the solutions yet, she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't keep ignoring the cracks in her relationship. It was time to confront the issues, even if it meant making some hard choices. In the days that followed, Kendall gave herself space to think. She spent quality time with her family, turning to her sisters for advice and support. Opening up about her emotions wasn't easy. Kendall was used to handling things on her own, but it felt necessary. She started to share her fears and doubts, letting those closest to her into the vulnerable parts of her life she had kept hidden for too long. Kris, always the attentive mother, stayed close. She didn't push Kendall to make any decisions, but made it clear she was there, no matter what. Kris knew this wasn't just about Kendall's relationship with Corey. It was about Kendall rediscovering her identity, her strength, and what truly made her happy. Kris had seen her daughter dim her light for someone else, and all she wanted was for Kendall to shine again. For Kendall, this wasn't just a moment to reevaluate her relationship. It was a journey of self-reflection. She realized she had been sacrificing parts of herself for the sake of keeping things together with Corey. But now she was ready to prioritize her own happiness and future, even if the path forward was uncertain. One evening, as Kendall sat quietly in the living room, Kris noticed her daughter's distant expression. Kendall's fingers nervously played with the hem of a pillow, her mind clearly preoccupied. Kris walked in, sitting beside her, and asked softly, "Kendall, what's on your mind?" Kendall hesitated, her emotions swirling. After a deep breath, she finally let the words spill out. "Mom, I feel like I'm losing who I am. Corey has changed so much, and I don't even recognize our relationship anymore. I feel stuck, and I don't know what to do." Hearing those words broke Kris's heart. She could see the pain in Kendall's eyes and knew her daughter had been struggling alone for far too long. Kris gently took Kendall's hand and said, "You don't deserve to feel this way. You are strong, kind, and so full of life. You need someone who values you for who you are and lifts you up, not someone who makes you feel small." Kendall's voice trembled. "But Mom, we've been together for so long. I don't even know how to walk away. What if I'm making a mistake?" Kris leaned in, her eyes filled with love and concern. "Sweetheart, staying in something that's not good for you isn't the answer. This isn't about Corey. It's about you. You've given so much of yourself to this relationship, and it's okay to admit that it's not working. It's okay to put yourself first." Kendall felt her mother's words sink in deeply. It wasn't just about ending a relationship. It was about finding herself again. While the road ahead seemed daunting, she realized she wasn't alone. With her family's support, she could take the steps needed to prioritize her well-being and happiness, because she deserved nothing less. Kendall was taken aback by her mother's honesty. She had always admired Kris's wisdom and strength, but hearing such straightforward words struck a chord deep within her. For the first time, Kendall began to see the reality of her situation clearly. In the weeks after their conversation, Kris's words stayed with Kendall, replaying in her mind. They pushed her to confront feelings she had tried to bury. Slowly, she started reaching out to her sisters and her closest friends, sharing thoughts she had kept to herself for far too long. Opening up was hard, but it felt like a step in the right direction.